What exactly is this imposing beast, and what is it doing on an Atari 8-bit video? This is called the ATR8000. It's released by SWP, Microcomputer Products. They were originally called, I think, software peripherals or something like that. This product came out in about 1982 for the Atari 8-bit line of home computers, and I thought it was just a way to interface with other like printers, and it has a Z80 in it, which I knew could sort of run CP/M. Well, it's much more than I thought it was. I have the manual for this, and it's available online. And I'm going to be going over this a little bit. I want to say thank you first to my friend Quinn from Quintech Retro. Check out his channel. I never would have made this video without his inspiration, because there's so much to this product, and I get overwhelmed by what I'm talking about, and I would have wanted to investigate it further, but I'm just going to throw out there what I know. I might open up the system, take a look inside. I will show you the back. The system is not as big as it actually looks in this video. I kind of wanted to make it look imposing. It's about 12 inches wide by about 11 inches deep and what, 2-3 inches high. I'm going to show you the back of the unit now, and then I'm going to show you it set up next to my 130XE. I don't have the cables for this. I don't have a way to check it. My buddy who lives locally named Rick, he's an Atari 8-bit fan and a tech, an electronics tech with 30-something years experience or more, maybe 40 years of experience. So he's willing to try to help me get this thing up and running, maybe clean up a couple of disk drives I have. And all right, let's check out the back. This is the back of the ATR8000. Here we have a reset button, computer in, peripheral out. This is for a printer, a floppy disk drive, and an RS-232. This peripheral can support up to 4 floppy drives, and I'll get into that a little bit more later, but what's interesting about it is it can support 8-inch floppy drives and 5 1/4 floppy drives. I think it can support up to 4 5 1/4 or 2 5 1/4 and 2 8s, something like that. Obviously these are connectors that are non-standard in the PC world now. I think I'd have to have these cables specially made, so I don't have access to those. And the way this works is it's actually a Z80 computer if you add more RAM. I don't know how much RAM the system has. It might have enough, because when I got this it came with CP/M magazines, so it might be able to run it. Alright, so now I'm going to maybe give a quick view of this sitting alongside my 65 or my 130XE, so you can see what it looks like. Here is my 130XE in front of my ATR8000, and what I think is interesting about this is they're about equal in size, approximately. I think most people would have probably been using this with an Atari 800 or one of the XL lines maybe. Yeah. I'm going to put it in a different way. This looks a little weird. It looks like the XE is much bigger than the ATR8000 due to the point of view of this, but I'll do that here in a second. But yeah, I would love to get this thing up and running. It seems like it'll be a lot of work to figure out though. Again, here is my ATR8000 next to my 130XE. They are about the same size. You know, not exactly. The ATR is about, I don't know, a few inches deeper, a little bit higher, and maybe a tiny bit wider, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they're about the same size. Now, I'm not sure how this would have been used back in the 80s. I don't know if people would set their monitor on top of it. If you know, let me know. I know these things are really rare, one of the rarest devices for the Atari 8-bit line. In fact, if you do a search of the internet, you won't find too much information about them. You will find some, and I'll show some of what I found here. But what you will find is on YouTube, there's just 1 or 2 videos. And one of them is like a 30-second video where someone boots up an ATR image, or not an ATR image, maybe it is, of a disk image of running CP/M 2.2 on this system. And I'm going to show you some of the books I have for CP/M and other stuff like that. But first I'm going to show you some of the disk drives I have. I have only 1 disk drive, and I've asked around online, and people say that this won't support the ATR8000. It's a TRS-80 disk drive, but we'll see in a second. I'll show you some more about it, and then I'll talk about what the manual says. This is the ATR sitting next to a 5 1/4 inch Radio Shack TRS-80 mini disk drive. This was plugged obviously into the TRS-80, I guess models 1 through 3, I think. I don't know too much about the TRS-80 lines, but this is, out of the box, I don't think it'll support this, but in the manual, it talks about the TRS-80 disk drives can be used, but you have to change some jumper settings inside the ATR8000, and you have to make a few soldering changes, which it talks about what they are, in order to support it. So perhaps I will be able to use this disk drive. If I don't use this one, I don't really have another disk drive that I can use, I don't think. The whole point of this system, by the way, was to make it so that you could use, at the time, easily available disk drives that were much cheaper. An average disk drive for the Atari back then, like the 810, this was before the 1050 came out, was about $550. And this system here, when it came out, was $350, and you could get a disk drive for about $200. Just like a standard disk drive and maybe a case for it and stuff like that for maybe $250. So you're outputting about $600 to get a disk drive and with this to get it running. So what would you do with that? Well, you were that gets more expensive, right? Well, if you wanted to add more disk drives after that, it's only another $200 instead of another $550 each time. And also the advantage of, at the time, there was, I don't even know if there was one double density disk drive for the Atari. From the reviews I've read, there weren't any. I've read some reviews in Byte magazine and Antic magazine of this from contemporary times, and there weren't any double density drives when this came out, and it was one of the reasons it was released, because in the normal mode this is just a peripheral instead of a Z80 computer. And don't get me wrong, because I did not know this until I was reading documentation, is this ATR8000 is a standalone Z80 computer. You can plug in a monitor to it, which acts as a terminal. You don't need the Atari at all, and it will run CPM 2.2, which I think is, had no idea that was the case. All the Atari does when it's not a peripheral is act as a terminal, and not even a good terminal at that, because it only works as a 40-column terminal with up to a virtual 80-column display wide. So yeah, pretty interesting. The weird thing about using a terminal is you needed a special cable available for SWP, which took the output from the ATR8000, which is the standard, connector for the Atari 8-bit line, the SIO connector, and brought it, and at the other end made it compatible with the terminal that was available in those days. I guess like a green screen terminal or something like that. I want to say I'm in a constant battle for light in this house. I had kind of a perfect setup in the garage. I've mentioned this already, that the outside is too cold to shoot in the garage. It's the beginning of December, and it's just too cold to shoot out there. But so I had this set up just a few moments ago, and I keep hitting my head on the chandelier that I have above my this table, and I'm moving this a little bit. So I shoved it around. So if the lighting looks different and not as good, or maybe it looks better, I don't know. But it's definitely different now because I'm not going to hit my head on that stupid chandelier anymore. So what did I set up here? This is my ATR8000 again, and I'm going to probably say that word a million times during this video. And this is a disk drive that is automatically supported without this. This is a Percom 2-disk drive. This thing probably doesn't work. When I got this, it was filthy dirty. It was stored in a shed. The inside of it was filthy dirty. I keep it because it's a rare device. They cost like $800 or something like that. I think I saw a list price of this semi-recently. When this was released, the single disk drive was $600 upon release. And I think the double was like $1,100 for just this. Very expensive device. It's also quite rare, and in fact, I was asked to dump the EEPROM that was inside of it. So I was going to send it to the person who wanted it dumped, but who lived in Canada. But instead, I just opened it up myself and dumped the EEPROM using my EEPROM reader burner, and I sent him an image of it. I was hoping it was the right one, and he checked it out, and yeah, he said it was accurate. And so yeah, that's another thing that's been done for the community, and that's posted on Atari Age in some way if you want to check it out. But I just wanted to show, because these are standard disk drives. I don't know if they're tandem disk drives or what, but this is the size of a standard disk drive at the time, for the most part. And I'm going to show a picture that in this video, hopefully if I remember to put it in, where there's basically two of these sitting this direction on top of this device with two 8-inch disk drives here. I found this in a magazine in one of the reviews from about 1984. I think it was in Byte magazine. Maybe it was in the Antic magazine. I can't remember which. I also found a price list from SWP on archive.org that someone just took pictures of the 3 pages, and I'll show you some of that stuff soon. I printed some of it out. But yeah, I mean, these disk drives are huge. And I want to note that I don't use disks anymore. I use I use cartridges. I use ways to work with ATR images, so you don't have to work with disks anymore. I have tons of disks. I have so many disk drives. In fact, I have another disk drive that has a Z80 in it, and it's possible to upgrade that disk drive just so you can run CPM 80 from it. I don't use a CPM. I always have wanted to. I've used emulation a bit just to get a taste for it because the Astrocade is my favorite computer, and people wanted it to run CPM back in the 70s and 80s, but it never was able to do that. So I have some programming books because in about 2013 I wanted to look into porting a program to the Astrocade that was originally released for the Z80. All right, so that's enough of this picture. You've been looking at this same still for quite a while. I'm going to maybe show a little bit more about this disk drive, just since it's so rare. Let's show the front and the back of it a little bit closer, and you'll see a lot of dirt. My friend Rick said he'd try to help me get up this drive running too. I think this one can just be supported with maybe SmartDOS or MyDOS. Originally, it required, I think, a hacked version of DOS in the earliest days in order to work. And maybe there was they wrote a specific DOS for this. It might have been an early version of MyDOS. I can't remember. But this company went away, I think, in the mid-'80s or something like that, late 80s. Again, here's that Percom disk drive. It's pretty wide. It's and yeah, that's the front of it. In a second, I'll show you the back. It's got some air vents on top, and I've opened this up, and it's a mess inside. If this thing works, I'd be shocked. But the electronics might work, and I think the disk drives are standard. So if I ever wanted to fix it down the line, I could. But using disks is a pain nowadays, and there's really no need to do that with an Atari system, or probably most systems nowadays. This is the back of my Percom disk drive, and here you have the two inputs, or input and output. I guess you can still daisy chain this. The model for this is the RF-D40-S2. Serial number is 3035088, and that's about it. Here's the on-off switch. I don't know what this does. Never used this device. There's all these dip switches here. They're all set all the way to the right, and it says expanding your peripheral vision. All right, cute little joke there, guys. I interrupt this extremely probably boring video to show you a little bit about one quick game. I've mentioned this game. I've even showed this exact manual before. The reason I'm showing this is, well, I'm showing a piece of hardware for this that can run CPM and let you use peripherals. That's not really going to be the subject of this of my Atari 8-bit series. I'm a gamer, really. I mean, I play games. I like to use some software. I do a little bit of basic programming now and then on usually the Astrocade, but I do want to play this game. It was recently dumped. I talked about that. So in the next video, I'm like 90% sure that I'm going to cover this game. It's a game written in BASIC, and I want to play it. And it's been only recently dumped in the last couple of months. So, and it's now December 2020. Until now, there hasn't been a dump of this 40-year-old game that worked properly. So there was for other systems, but not for the Atari. Okay, so now we're going to get back to our regularly scheduled ATR8000 coverage. What did I get with my Atari ATR8000? Well, like I said, I don't know if it can run CPM, but I suspect it might be able to. If not, at least the person had hopes it would, or maybe this stuff was provided by the manufacturer. This is the premiere issue and the second issue of a magazine called the CPM User's Guide, or a User's Guide to CPM System and Software. I don't know if there are more than these two magazines published. I couldn't find anything about these magazines. In fact, I couldn't find these online or anything. They've since been scanned by someone else that I sent these off to scan them, and they're available on archive.org if you want to check them out. But yeah, I haven't really even looked through these too much because I don't use CPM. But man, CPM looks, well, I guess it doesn't look any more difficult than DOS, and DOS is easy to use. Well, I guess once you just got to get used to it, you know. Yeah, yeah, it's a whole foreign world to me. The Atari made things simple by having a menu-driven operating system. Well, the Atari's menu-driven operating system. What else we got over here? It tells you how to use WordStar and stuff like that. Yeah. Check out the size of this computer. I don't know if you can see that, but it's a comic. I love these old comics. They're funny. This one, he's just writing a letter on this giant computer that says, "Dear Mom." Yeah. I wonder what kind of people were able to get their magazines published or cartoons published in here. The layout of this magazine leaves a lot to be desired. I'll leave it open to this page, and the reason I'm leaving it open to this page is I'm going to show you something that I have that didn't come with this system, but comes in a gray box like this, and it is actually CP/M 2.2, the original manual, and I bought it new old stock, and yeah, I will show you that next. And the reason I'm doing that is because CP/M 2.2 is the version of CP/M that runs on the ATR8000, and in fact, from what I understand, I'm not a CP/M user. It was probably, in my point of view, from what I understand, it was, I think, the last version of CP/M before they came out with CP/M Plus, also known as CP/M 3, I think. Maybe there was a CP/M 2.3, I don't know. But CP/M Plus allowed you to break the 64K barrier and use paged ROM or RAM or something like that, so you could have more than 64K, which is unusual since the Z80 can only normally use 64K of address space. All right, so keep in mind this is what this looks like, and now I'm going to show you the CP/M original manual. This is that CP/M original disk and operating system, and I mentioned this in my last video, which talked about books, although it wasn't in this Atari channel and or series. It was on my channel, and I showed this because this was a new old stock version of the operating system, which some company might even still have. Don't ask me where they were. I don't remember. I bought this in 2013. I want to thank someone who will never see this video. His name is Emmanuel Roche, and he is from France. And in 2013, I wanted to get my a program ported over to the Authoritative from a book that was on Z80, and assumed that you were writing for the CP/M systems. And I went on to some forums, and I found and asked some questions about CP/M, and this guy helped me out. In fact, he ended up porting the program to CP/M and getting it running, and he said it had some errors in it actually. So, but he helped me out a lot. In fact, I'm going to show some more books that he recommended to me. But he said if I wanted the original manual for CP/M 2.2, it was available from this website. Don't remember where it was, and I won't be able to figure it out either. But so I'm going to go through this and show what it is. But I wanted to show you the box, because the box, I mean, if you remember the old early IBMs, they had really nice boxes, and so did the CP/M boxes. And they're nice. They're slip cases. I'll show you this. This is still shrink wrapped a little bit. I took it opened it very carefully. I actually have the original disc in here. But as I mentioned, this is for a computer that never actually was released, and the disc is inside of it was for a computer that was never released, a laptop, which you used to be able to buy from the same site. You used to be able to, I think they had several hundred of them. They were all, I don't know if they were prototypes, but they never got released. It was, I don't know the whole story behind it, but it enabled me to get this for next to nothing, so, and brand new. Which, it's not like you can't find it online or something in PDF format, but it's nice to have in a book. This is the CP/M operating system for 2.2, and I'm going to take it out of its slipcase, and then I'll show you a little bit better. Well, it's got the wrapping there. It just slips in and out, and that's that part, and I'll show you what's inside of it here in a minute, because if I do that, they're going to fall everywhere. In a minute, if you hear me cursing and cussing, it's because I have my tripod as high as it can possibly go when I'm looking down on this manual for CP/M. And I should note that CP/M didn't come with the ATR8000 unless you got the... I take that back. I don't know if it came with it. I know in the price list that it cost $100. I don't know if you had to buy that in addition. So maybe you did. So maybe if you bought the ATR8000 with 64K, which was required, then you had to buy that in addition. I don't know. Anyone who had a ATR8000, please leave comments, because there aren't too many people out there that had them, and there's a couple of threads on Atari Age, and there's some neat links, and then you can find the discs images, but apparently to get the disc images onto an actual floppy can be a problem. So if I decide to pursue this, I may try to find someone on Atari Age who can actually just send me the floppy disks. And that is if I can get a floppy disk or floppy drive to even work. And it wouldn't be me, it'd be my friend Rick. So Rick, I'm pretty sure you're watching this video. If you're willing to still help me on this, once you start seeing everything that's involved, you can duck out, please. It's not a big deal. All right, so let me open this up, and I'll show you what's inside. Try to stay out of the picture here, but maybe I won't be able to. So, I'm going to take this and throw it away. Well, not literally. And I'm going to open it up so you can see. So this is the original stuff. I'm going to move this over a little tiny bit so you can see it. And Maybe try to center this a little better. And I guess it's not too important to see it all, so I will try to zoom in just a tiny, tiny bit here. I've already thanked you once, Quinn, but I'm thanking you again because what I'm doing right now I never would have done without the inspiration that you've given me with your videos. So thanks again. Yeah, I'm just going through this quickly, and with my friend's help I've been able to get my videos out on a mostly weekly basis. So the great thing about what you see here, this is the manual opened up. This is exactly what you'd get when you bought the manual brand new. I haven't taken anything out. It's all in the same order it was in. I mean, I've looked at this, but this is what you'd get. This is something you can't really find when you look at a PDF. In fact, all these things are usually separate. So here we have, I don't even know what this stuff is. Oh, it tells you what you can get other software from that's available. Like CPM is a world I just don't know about. And yeah, I think this came out before there was a CPM 86 for DOS, or not for DOS. It was the operating system besides DOS. So let's see. Inside of this we have, what do we got? The CPM standard. Yeah, we know about CPM. It's a standard. And you'll notice that there's some things on here that came out for DOS later, but I think they were originally for CPM. Like, well, I guess VisiCalc was actually for the Apple first. But you know, there's so much stuff for CPM. I mean, there's so many pieces of software that started there. All right, what else we got here? We have the software performance report. Don't know what that means. Oh, wow. This is if you have problems. Check this out. If you have problems, you send it in, and here's a sheet. Oh, my goodness. That is just... All right, I'm going to read some of what's on here. And, wow, this is pretty cool. Digital research, software performance report. Tell you the product number, your username, all this stuff, and I guess you send this in if you have some trouble with your disks. Crazy. Very, very nice. Digital Research, the company who made this system, originally called Galactic Digital Research, was headed by Gary Kindle. He died in maybe 1990 or early 1990s in kind of a freak accident at a bar. I think he hit his head in a bar fight, if you can believe it, something like that. I read. And there's not too much written about him. I mean, there's bits here and there on the internet. There's not a book dedicated to him as far as I know, although there's a great chapter in a book dedicated to him about some of the pioneers of the computer revolution. If I remember, I'll try to say the name of this somewhere in the show notes or something like that. So this is your warranty card. Send it off to Digital Research, which was in Pacific Grove, California. And you've got CPM. It tells you the computer it's for the Xerox 1800, which, like I said, never came out. Now this is what's going to be handy for me if I ever start using this, is this command guide, because I don't know how to use CPM. And it looks helpful. So yeah, I mean, I've already said 10 times, this is a foreign world to me. And it's a foreign world I don't really need to dig into because I'm like a game player. But I know that there are games for CPM, but they're all obviously like, they look like DOS games, but really they look like CPM games, don't they? So they have no graphics. Yeah, so there's that. And now I will open this up. And this may remind you of what it looks like from the early days of looking at DOS. And you might guess that that's because Microsoft took a page out of the digital research book and did this themselves. All right, so DOS, or CPM. Now, if I'm in the way here, maybe I'll go from the other side here. Again, thanks to my friend Quinn, because I would have stopped the video right there, tried to make cuts. What's the point? There's really... All right, let's see if it says version 2.2 anywhere here. Copyright 1976, 77, 78, 79, 82, and 83. So the first edition of the manual, not this one, not CPM 2.2, came out in 76. And this is the third edition for September 1983. And there's trademarks here, stuff like that. So it tells you how to use it. And this isn't really easy to comprehend too easily. And so there's tons and tons of books written for CPM. And I have a few of them because, I mean, I don't know if the books are easy to come by nowadays, but I mean, when I was looking into this kind of stuff, and by the way, I don't know if you can tell, but there are different colors here. This is all not just a black page. This is red, and so that's supposed to tell you what keys you press. So, neat stuff. The utility subroutines, I don't know. And there's source code in here. I mean, what the? Man, this does not look like an easy thing to use, but Maybe this. All right, reader comment card. So what's after this? An index or something? Oh, this was, you can find this interesting. This is the floppy disk. I'm going to zoom in on this just so I can show you. Here, let's check it out. And that's it for this manual, and I'm just going to zoom in on that so you can see what I'm talking about. This is the close-up of the disk, and I'm going to take it out just a little bit so you can see what it looks like. And this is contained in a little plastic sleeve, and this would be the boot disk for CP/M 2.2. And yeah, I'll do a close-up of the label because that's pretty cool. So there's the label. I'm not sure how well it turns up here. It talks about it's by Digital Research. This is the end user disk. This is for the CP/M. It's for the Xerox 1800 system disk, or I think it was a laptop if I recall, or it wasn't a laptop. It was a smaller computer. It wasn't a desktop size. The serial number, the reorder number, and it came out in 1983. It would have, but that, man, it's just been sitting in a warehouse for, like, let's see, I bought it in 2013, so it was sitting in somebody's warehouse for 30 years when I bought this new old stock. Kind of incredible. Next up, I'm going to show some CP/M books I have. I was planning to open up the ATR8000, but we'll see how I go. We'll see how that goes. But stay tuned, because maybe I will. Not to leave you in suspense or anything. You may notice that I've talked a lot about CP/M in a video that's supposedly for the Atari. Well, that's because this ATR8000 runs CP/M, as I've said, and I'm showing you some of the books for it now. Not for the ATR8000, but for CP/M that were recommended to me by that guy in France in 2013 who I was talking with. And he recommended this book because it was a bestseller, and it covers CP/M 1.3, 1.4, 2, 2.2, and CP/M 3, which is also known as CP/M+. It covers tools which I don't know what they mean, but like tools such as Mac, SID, Lib, others, some basic stuff. I'll flip through this just very briefly. See what you see here. Hey, look, there's a picture of ET. The number is busy, but if you'll put me on automatic, I'll redial every couple of minutes. Using disk drives, that might be helpful with my ATR8000. One of the neat things about some of the reviews I read about the ATR8000 is they say it's not upgradable, so it doesn't have slots, obviously, for CP/M. But it is considered one of the best CP/M computers because it can basically auto-detect what kind of disk drive you have, which I guess that's unusual for the CP/M machines. Yeah, so this is, it looks like a good little manual. Let's see what else I've got. Oh, and before I flip this away, Mitchell Waite, I guess he was someone who formed some of the early computer book or publisher called the Waite Group, I think. Yeah. By the way, if you have any of these CP/M manuals or books and you know about them, leave some comments. I'd just be interested to hear. This is another book that I bought because it was recommended to me by Emmanuel, and he said Mastering CP/M by Alan Miller. This is one of my favorite CP/M books. Go and buy a paper copy. Since CP/M is dead, I usually pay for these books only a few bucks, maybe $5 at maximum, and there's one for sale for $3.57 on Abe Books right now, which is this book that I bought right there. And he says his previous book, meaning Alan Miller, called 8080Z80 Assembly Language Techniques for Improved Programming, is not needed if you are already an assembly programmer. I think that it is definitely better than Ken Barber's books. Right now, there is one for sale for $27.81. Well, that doesn't matter really. So I'm going to show you the back of this book. I'll flip through it a little bit. Yeah, let's see. So I guess these are handy. This is an ex-library book, as you can see there. Duplicating and altering CP/M disks. Yeah, so I almost want to set this up and have it as my ATR8000 and just have it as a terminal and just try it out. But then again, I don't really want to bother with disks, but we'll see. All right, but what does it say here in the back about this book? It says, this book explains techniques for using, altering, and adding features to the CP/M operating system. It will give you a complete understanding of the CP/M modules, particularly the BIOS and the BDOS, which I don't know what that means. Macros, the powerful tools for developing and organizing assembly language programs, are clearly represented. For advanced CP/M users and systems programmers, this book will enable you to explore the subtleties. It'll enable you to explore CP/M and to enhance the power of CP/M commands. Included is a comprehensive set of reference appendices. And Arthur Miller is a professor at the New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology and a contributor to Interface Age. And I wanted to bring that up because Arthur Miller, it says a little bit about the author. He lived in Socorro, which is only about maybe an hour south of where I live here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And this book came out in '83. And they're talking about New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology, which is still down there. And it's now considered one of the top tech schools in the United States for some things. And so that's kind of neat that this was published, not published in New Mexico, but was written here in the state. Yeah, pretty cool. About this book, Emmanuel says, finally, the only book ever written on the subject of writing a BIOS for CP/M is The Programmer's CP/M Handbook by Andy Johnson-Laird, the man who warned Gary Kindle that he saw the name of a Microsoft employee on a little-known CP/M 86 clone. Right now, there are 2 copies of Abe books for $1, which is how much I bought this for, just $1. The problem with this book is that it has 2 versions which were printed with the same ICBM number. If you don't know where to look after, you don't know if you have the first run or the corrected version. Several years ago, I published the details on the comp.os.cbm newsgroup. And I should note here that Emmanuel never could find where he posted the differences between the 2 versions of the book. And I did look through and I did find information about this, and I have the first version of the book that has the errors. Luckily, I did find some information online, and there was an errata sheet published, which I will show here from Byte magazine. And so here it is. I was able to find that online, and I took it and printed it out. And it basically just says some of the problems, and says this message is of interest to owners and prospective owners of Andy Johnson-Laird's superb The Programmer CP/M Handbook. In the original edition, about 2 pages of listings were not printed. The missing part in lines, and then it tells the line numbers that are missing. Anyone who wants the missing lines can get them from the author's office, and you have to write to them. So they're not actually printed here. But I think I did find them online, and I printed them somewhere. Let's see. So in 2013, I did say I wanted the errata, and someone did point it out to me, and I printed it out. So it's available in where did I post this? So if you look in November 24th, 2013, you'll see that there's a subject called Wanted Errata for Programmer CP/M's Handbook in the comp.os.cbm, not CBM, that'd be Commodore, CP/M newsgroup. Check it out, and you'll see that it was found. So you'll see that the errata for this is available. And am I going to write a BIOS for CP/M? I don't think so, but there are people who still make CP/M machines to this day because apparently they're, quote, easy to make, and people do it because Z80s are still being made, and 64K is easy to come by, and CP/M, I think in some way or another, is freely distributable. Don't quote me on that, but it's somehow you're allowed to distribute some version of it, either at no cost or low cost or something like that, and you don't have to worry about it. All right, what book do I have next? Emmanuel also recommended this book to me called Osborne CP/M User's Guide 2nd Edition by Thom Hogan, and it's for all CP/M users. And I don't know why they called it Osborne CP/M. I guess because of the time when this book was published in '82, maybe the Osborne computer had just come out. They were trying to appeal to them, but it's for users of CP/M in general. I don't think it's dedicated just to CP/M 2.2, but I think CP/M 2.2 is covered. And there's other comments I was reading from Emmanuel I had printed and put inside. Maybe he had no exact comments about this book, so I didn't print them. But this book I got at the same time as all those others. And yeah. This book came out in '82, like I said, and let's flip it over and see what it says about the book. It says, in this revised edition, the latest CP/M developments are discussed, including CP/M 86, the operating system for the 8086 and 8088 based microcomputers, such as the IBM personal computer. If anyone's ever heard of the IBM personal computer, let me know, because I have never heard of it. Yeah, some jest going on there. For computer users who want to know the basics of CP/M, this guide bridges the gap between technical manuals and your working knowledge of microcomputers. For beginners, the Osborne CP/M User's Guide covers all CP/M commands in detail, describes standard CP/M utility programs, discusses high-level languages and utility programs that run on CP/M, provides reference lists and tables, examines the system's approach to implementation of CP/M. For more advanced users and programmers, the Osborne CP/M User's Guide details CP/M 80 and CP/M 86 system calls. This CP/M seems pretty complex to me. I'm not sure I need to dig into it, and that's why I want to thank my buddy Quinn again, because I just never would have made this video. I mean, as I started digging into the ATR8000, I realized there's a lot to learn about CP/M if I wanted to use some of these disk drives that might work with it. And because I'm definitely not going to use it as a peripheral. Like I said, I'm a games player on the Atari. And so there's like, it also covers CP/M-Net, don't know what that is, or CP-Net, I guess it's a networking protocol or something like that. But let's flip through some of the pages, see what we find, and then I just have one more book to cover. And then, let's see, I guess that's about it. I think I am going to open up the ATR8000 and take a look inside. Maybe I can see what kind of RAM it has. If I can figure that out, I might be able to figure out if it can run CP/M or not. Yeah, and again, I'd love to hear back from people who have actually used the ATR8000 before. In fact, I'd love to see some more videos about the system up and running. And maybe you can make one and help me out, figure out how to use mine. Yeah, COBOL, man, that's a language I did some programming in COBOL back in the 90s. I was taking classes on programming. And man, what a bear that system is. What are some of the languages that are supported here? Choosing a language. We've got Ada that's supported under CP/M. We've got BASIC, we've got assemblers, you've got C. Oh, and 82, huh? You've got COBOL, you've got Forth, got Fortran, Pascal. I think wasn't Turbo Pascal first written for CP/M? I think it was. PLI 80. I don't know what PLI is. I've heard of it, but I don't really know much about it. And some other languages called RPG, which is the report program generator, which is, I had to do so many programs in that when I was taking classes in the mid-90s because the AS400, was a system we had to learn to program. And I hated that language. It's not even like it's terrible. Look it up if you've never heard of it before. But I hate programming that language. And then they talk about some word processors you could use with CP/M, which WordStar is the one that most people used. In fact, the reason people would pick this up to use for the Atari was because WordStar was the industry standard at the time, and you could use it with your Atari if you had this system. And I don't know too much about WordStar, but I know it was highly thought of at the time. All right, one more book to look at, and then I'm done, and I'm going to take a look at the hardware again. This book is called The Amstrad CP/M Plus by David Powys, maybe? Lisb, and Andrew R.M. Clarke. This book wouldn't be something I ever would have thought of getting, especially since the ATR8000 can't run CP/M Plus. I don't think. I think it can only run 2.2. That's the only operating system I think it can run. But at the time when I was buying these Amstrad books, I wasn't thinking about using them with the ATR8000. I was using emulation, and CP/M Plus is really CP/M 3.0, and it is what allows you to break this 64K barrier, as I mentioned earlier. But mentioned by Emmanuel, he says, since we are talking of CP/M Plus, which being the last version of 8-bit CP/M is considered by some the best one, find a copy of the Amstrad CP/M Plus. I should explain that this huge book is, in fact, a compilation of articles published over the years in the English CP/M User Group UK Journal. That's why it is so big and interesting. Right now, there's one for sale for $1. But only in England, of course. Well, yep, I ordered this from England and it came quite promptly. Shipping for this one was quite a bit, though. And he goes on to say, I said it would be a good investment, and he says, indeed, when Amstrad launched their 8-bit micros running under CP/M Plus, they were surprise bestsellers. Millions of people all over Europe suddenly wanted to learn more about CP/M Plus. So Amstrad, being an English company, asked the CP/M User Group UK to write one. They were the biggest CP/M user group in Europe with 4,000 members. So the editor of the journal, Andrew Clarke, and one of the most knowledgeable members, David Powys-Lybbe, working at Digital Research in Europe, reviewed all of the most interesting articles that had been published in their journal, stuffed some more in, wrote a brand new chapter on the MyDOS of the CP/M Plus, and then showed the result to Amstrad, which balked at the size of this 500-page magnus opus. They were thinking of, in typical commercial mind, just a simple 100-page long user's guide. What they got was a CP/M encyclopedia and the only study of the MyDOS of CP/M Plus, so they refused to print and distribute it. Feeling the pressure of newbies who were deluged with questions about the Amstrad micros, the authors finally decided to publish it themselves, and it was a bestseller. It was also one of the last CP/M books printed, so it is very, very good. 30 years later, the authors are still alive and kicking. This was in 2013, and he sends me a link that's to www.mml.co.uk. This is their address of their homes, but they no longer answer questions about CP/M Plus. All right, let's take a look at this book. That's the front. This is the back. I guess that kind of shows the inside of it. It reminds me of the game for the Commodore 64 called Little Computer People. Well, that's funny. So that's pretty amusing. So you see this is the front, and when you look at the back, this is what's going inside the monitor, but this is backwards, so it's actually like you picked up, held it up to a window or something. Very clever looking book. Is it really 500 pages like he said? It is, well, it's broken down into different number of pages. Yeah, 518 pages there, plus, I don't know, plus another 20, 30 pages. So, what have we got here? Oh, this is some thin paper. Huh, interesting. You can actually see through it. It's that thin. So I've never taken a look at this book. I've looked at some of the other ones, but I've never looked at this one because I've not really used CP/M Plus. And I don't know if I ever will, because I'm not going to use it with the ATR8000, but yeah. All right, so that is my coverage of the books. I'm going to show them all together, and then I'm going to take a look at the ATR8000, maybe just open it up, show a couple still pictures of it, and see what we think of the inside. This video is turning out to be a little bit longer than I thought, and it's not really got a lot of Atari content. I mean, we got to see my 130XC very briefly. Promise my next video will show more Atari content. If you're into CP/M, this video is for you, apparently. So here's the 6 books I have on CP/M. I think this, well, it doesn't include my 2 magazines, and I might have a couple of, I definitely have a ton of Z80 and 8080 programming books, but none of them really concentrate 100% on the CP/M language, but they do touch, a lot of them do touch on it, because the 8080 was a CP/M, like if you wrote CP/M programs, you wrote them for the 8080 or the Z80. Unless, of course, you were writing CP/M 86, in which case you wrote them for the 8086. And there's a whole story behind that. If you aren't aware that, you know, Digital Research was basically the operating system company, and Microsoft was the company that made like languages until the IBM PC came out. Read some history about that kind of stuff. It is extremely interesting, and there's a lot of tall tales out there, but they make for interesting, fun reading too. But some of them aren't true, but a lot of what you hear is true. So I recommend reading about CP/M and how it was placed on the original IBM, but you had to purchase it separately, and it came with DOS. It's not the only reason why it didn't catch on, but it's one of the reasons it didn't catch on in the community. I'm not sure how long CP/M 86 was around, but it was around for a little while, at least. All right, so here's the 6 books. The one I'm planning to use the most is probably this one, if I get into using CP/M at all. And I might try it out, just to try seeing it run on a terminal at least, which would be funny because I'd be running it through a terminal connected to a serial port on a modern PC, probably Windows 7 or Windows 10. Kind of weird. Or I might try doing it with the Atari, but we'll see. I might just try using it as a Z80 computer, that ATR8000. We'll see. Yeah, so these are the books that I've got. I've got 6 of them. If you're into any of these kind of things, obviously these were all recommended by someone who's very knowledgeable about CP/M, and I think that you will enjoy them all. Next up, I'm going to show my ATR8000 one more, and I think I'm going to open it up, trembling a little bit about that. We'll see. I completely forgot to talk about this. I do have some of the manuals that came with this, and these came with the ATR8000, but I think they're actually photocopies of the original manual. I've looked online. Some of the stuff hadn't been archived yet, and it has been now. I sent it off to Alan, and he was able to archive it, put it on archive.org. So this is the owner's manual. This was already, I think, archived. Something this didn't come with is the CP/M supplement, which is archived already, luckily. So if I do upgrade this system to 64K, then maybe I can get it to work with CP/M, if I decide to do that. Something I haven't really noted is that is the only difference between the peripheral device and making this into a computer, is adding RAM. There's no extra boards to install. You just got to take out the 16K chips, not 16K chips, the 16K of RAM, change some jumper settings, put in the 64K chips, which just go right into the same sockets. I think you have to change 6 or 8 jumpers, and suddenly you have a CP/M computer rather than just a peripheral box. My dog is standing behind me, and she's like curiously looking at me while I'm talking about this. She's thinking, I'm bored of CP/M already, and so are these people. Yeah, that's kind of funny. And let's see. So I'm going to flip through this real quick. Like I said, this is available online if you want to read it. This was published in 1982. I'm not going to go through every single page. I think this is about 80 pages or so. But it's well put together, and it tells you everything you need to know about how to use the system. I'm not going to use it as a peripheral. Like I said, I don't use the this kind of. I don't use discs anymore. I just don't. Let's see. Some part in here is telling you, like, look at this. It's telling you how to make the cables, I guess, or what kind of cables are required. Yeah, look at that. So that's how the cables are. So, Rick, if you're actually watching this and you do help me get this up and running, all the information that's needed to, I guess I should move this over a tiny bit so we can see the actual pages. All the information required to understand how to hook up a floppy drive are in here. Yeah, if I decide to hook up a floppy drive. And hey, if anyone out there can tell me if there's like a floppy drive equivalent that you can use, like say that lets you use SD drives or compact flash cards or something like that, and emulates like a standard floppy drive from the 1980s that could just be used with this ATR8000, let me know, because that would be neat to use. And there are so many pieces of hardware out there, it's pretty much impossible to keep track of them. So Percom drives, that was the drive I showed earlier. How to use it with other 5 1/4 drives, the 810, the 830 modem, Hayes modems, printers, 40-column printers, 80-column printers. Yeah, really, well, yeah, I advise you to check out this manual if you even have a passing interest. That's all I'm going to show of it. Now I'm going to show some other stuff that I read about this, like, and maybe some other stuff that I have that was scanned just recently, so you can download from archive.org in the last couple of months. This is a 4-page letter that was sent to owners of the ATR8000 who bought it initially. And this letter was included with a new ROM that you would insert inside your ATR8000. And that's another question I guess I need to figure out is which version of the ROM do I have inside my ATR8000? Which I don't even know if this thing works to begin with, so who knows. But it tells you how to insert it and to use it and how to check it to make sure it's working. Thanks to Alan for actually putting this online as well. Just in the past couple of minutes, the dog behind us started barking. And normally, if I was living in a normal neighborhood, I could wait till that dog stopped barking. But that dog will actually literally be out there probably for the rest of the day barking. Like for 8 hours, I'm serious. So if you hear a dog barking, that's just the way it goes. This is a newsletter that was sent out to ATR8000 owners. It's about 8 pages long. This was also not archived, I don't think, until it's been archived now. It's been put up online by Alan just in the last couple of weeks, I think, or maybe a couple months. I don't really remember what's in this one. It tells you more about what was added and how to use some stuff and make some changes. So there's that. This is a bunch of miscellaneous material that was included with the ATR8000. I don't think some or most of this had been archived either. This was also archived, and Alan added this into one basic PDF and put it on archive.org. You'll have to sort of sort through it because it's not really any logical order, and I think there's page numbers, but they don't really correspond to what's going on here, so I don't know. But here we have interpreting CP/M error messages and the status register. This seems way beyond me. Using the monitor routines and variables, and this is the order it was in. I'm not sure if this is the order it's supposed to be in. Like obviously it says page 1 here, but I don't know. This is all stuff that you might be able to find in some of those books that we were looking at. I don't know. There's an appendix, so maybe this was added to later versions of the manual because it's not in the original manual that was scanned and is available in a couple of places online. Here's how to write an Atari basic program where you can access some stuff, which don't know what that's going on, but there is I guess what is this, a piece of software that you would type in? I'll just read what it says. It says the ATR8000 monitor. The ATR8000 monitor ROM can be accessed after the ATR8000 terminal program is run. When the terminal program is run, the sign-on message, hashtag, or ATRMon, appears on the screen. 4 commands can be entered. All right, well, I'm not going to get into that. It says once you get into there, you can also use this program. Oh, well, that's nice to know, I guess, if I ever do any of this. Here's the bytes that have been changed from version 1.0 of the monitor, I guess. It's very specific stuff that isn't useful to me because I don't even know what it's talking about. The serial driver for DOS. Oh, something that I haven't noted yet is there was a parallel and serial port peripheral made by Atari called the 850 interface device, and this could basically take its place, but program was not compatible. So if it supported the 850 device, you had, at first you couldn't even use it directly with the ATR8000, but eventually they came out with drivers and stuff so you could. Maybe that's what this is talking about here. Oh, and the OS A Plus was what the operating system that it came with originally. I don't know if that's what continued to come out with forever, but yeah. Let's see, a terminal program. Yeah, so somehow there's a terminal program built in, I think, to the ROM. I don't know. Error messages. DD-sysgen. That's, yeah, these are just weird names. They remind me of names in Linux. I mean, I like Linux, but man, whoever came up with some of those names, they tried to be as non-user friendly as they could, and that's the last page. I don't really know what this is all about, but now I'm really going to show you the inside of the ATR8000 hardware. Oh man, I am such a liar. I am going to get to the CP/M hardware. I wanted to show you a couple of the product reviews for this equipment that I found and was able to use, and I found useful in how I learned a little bit about how the system worked. So in the July 1983 issue of Antic, there is a review of the system, and here you can barely see it, but there's an ATR it has two 5¼ inch floppy drives sitting on top of it and two 8-inch floppy drives sitting to the side of it. It talks about the 16K version and it talks about the 64K version. This review is in two parts. The first part with the 16K version is written by Chuck Skinner. The second part is by Mike Dunn. If you read about it, it's 2 pages long. You can easily find the Antic magazine online and read it there. It's on archive.org and various other places as well. This was by far my favorite review of the system, and these pictures are in color if you read the originals. This is from Byte magazine, the December 1983 issue, and I had no idea how thick those magazines were. I mean, I remember Byte magazine being thick, but this issue of Byte magazine is 600 pages long, and I remember when I saw them in the mid-80s, I never picked them up because I had a Commodore 64, but I was like, I'd flip through them once in a while because they had them at the library where I lived, and I didn't understand what they were talking about for one thing because it's like a foreign world, kind of like I'm talking about CP/M here. It just was so different. But this article is called the ATR8000. The Z80 computer peripheral enables Atari users to run CP/M-based programs. And it also talks about how you can run the 8086 programs, which I don't think I've mentioned yet. There was actually an optional expansion that lets you run DOS programs, or put an 8088 inside of it, but it seems limited. They talk about it a little bit here. Like it would let you run DOS programs, but only plain DOS programs. And if they supported any graphics whatsoever, that was it. Nope. So, but apparently you were able to run some DOS programs. So this article is pretty long. I recommend you read it. Download the version of Byte magazine and check it out, especially for the color programs with some of the color pictures. So it's let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's 8 pages, and here up at the top are color pictures of the CoPower 88 main processor board mounted on the ATR's bottom bay, and the CoPower 88 processor board and Z80 adapter board, and they're here in color, so check them out there. You'll think they're pretty cool looking, and has anyone ever run into those? I don't know. This is an ad for the CP/M and MS-DOS compatibility for all Atari computers. This is from the August 1984 issue of Antic magazine, which is volume 3, number 4. You can find this issue online. It's also, this same ad is in a couple of other issues as well. I printed this out for myself so I can have it for reference to make this video. Yeah, check that out. This is a one-page, kind of an update for a previous article. This one is written by David Duberman. He's the technical editor of Antic magazine. This was published in August 1984, about a year after the actual review of the system. He's talking about how you can now actually support 80 columns CP/M on the Atari using a Bit3 80 column board, which cost about, at the time, $300. And I think it plugged into the Atari 800 and allowed you to use certain programs that were written specifically for it with an 80 column mode. And they go on and say how it's useful and how it can also be now powered with an 8088 coprocessor or CPU. It wouldn't be a coprocessor really, because still in either case your Atari is just acting as a terminal. And let's see, that's about it. Remember, you can read all of these online, and if you're interested in the ATR8000, do. It's probably the best place I've found information about these systems. And I did find some, other places to find information, but these are professional writers, and they talk about the system from the point of view of 1984 or 1983, and why are you going to use it? Because to me, it's kind of baffling. It seems like there were other options out there, but when you compare that the ATR8000 allowed you to use disk drives that were $200 compared to, at the time in 1982, disk drives for the Atari were between $500 and $600 and were single density and not double density, it's clear why you would want to do that, except for the fact that copy protected programs often didn't work. Some later on they started they started making changes to the ROM inside the ATR8000 that fixed some of that, but mostly if you wanted to run copy protected programs, and what program wasn't copy protected, you needed to use at least one Atari disk drive. Now this is a curious case. These were uploaded to archive.org in January of 2018 by a user who came across an ATR8000 parts and accessories 3-page catalog in his list from July 1984. And I'm glad I remembered I had this because I wanted to show you some of the prices. We have CPM 2.2 on 5 1/4 inch disc, like that's the one I was showing you earlier, and that would be $100. You could also get it on an 8-inch floppy for $100. And this is in July of '84. I wasn't aware that 8-inch floppies were still really being used in regular use, but there you go. You could get MyDOS on 5 1/4 inch for $30. You could get the 64K RAM chips just by themselves for $100. You get in adapters for about $20 each, $30. 4-drive adapter cable would have cost you $35. Modem cables were about $30. Terminal cables were like $30. The terminal cable is neat. Like I said, this cable is used to connect an RS-232 terminal instead of an Atari to the ATR at the computer in port. So what it would do is you'd have the SIO port basically to a 232 adapter. So that's kind of weird. You've got a MyDOS available on an 8-inch floppy. Now, does anyone have that in their collection? That's weird. You've got some terminal programs you could buy for about $80, for about $30. You've got source code for the ATR ROM, which is kind of neat. Schematics, and some of these schematics you can find online. You've got more source code available on 8-inch floppies. I had no idea, and I haven't really taken a close look at this. You can buy the floppy drives. You can get a single-sided double-density floppy drive for $250. That includes the cabinet and the power supply, so basically all you need is the cable, and then you can plug it in. And that was, at the time, floppy drives were still pretty darn expensive. I don't think they were still like $600 anymore, though. You get a tandem 5 1/4 inch double-sided double-density drive for $329. You get the ATR8000, which is 16K, for $449. And that would come with the interface ports, obviously, and you can connect up to the 4 disk drives, a printer, which is basically what I've talked about already. And if you wanted to get it with 64K, so that you could get it to run CPM 2.2, which I think it might have shipped with. Yeah, it came with the terminal cable and CPM 2. Yeah, it came with the terminal cable that you required and the 5 1/4 inch floppies that were required to have CPM 2.2 running. That cost $600. And let's see what else we got here. Various configurations of the 64K system. The processor board, just to run the 8088 software, was $400 on its own. To get an additional 256K of memory for that processor board with that processor board, that was $500. An additional 128K add-on was $200. So running the system was not cheap. That's what I'm trying to get across here. And there's a reason the system is rare. Not many people would have had a need for it, for one thing. I guess maybe people who are running bulletin boards would have used it. Okay, now, I've said it a couple times already. Up next is going to be me opening up the inside and looking at the inside of the ATR8000. Well, this time, I mean it. Or do I? Well, no, I really do this time. Okay, unusually, I had a hard time getting this to focus, maybe because this is such a large area of gray. This is the sort of the top view. I'm going to try to show me taking the actual system off right here. On the side, we've got 4 screws. not too exciting for me to show you that way. So I just want to show you, I'll be opening a screw here, I'll be opening a screw there, I'll be opening a screw here, and I'll be opening a screw there. If you're looking at the front of the ATR8000, this is the left side of the unit. There's one screw, and my big arm's in the way probably. And there's the second screw. All right. Let's show you the other side. Now if we're looking at the ATR8000, this is the right side of the unit. Let's take off this screw. And this is doing it in real time, and I've not actually opened up and taken a look at this system before, so I will show you what I have taken over here in a moment, so I can look it up. So now I'm going to take the unit up and we'll look at it inside. Okay, so it's kind of nerve-wracking because I haven't actually looked at the inside of this unit before. I'm guessing it'll be intact. So let's take up the top. I think it should just come straight up. That's good, so it did. And that is the inside of the unit. Let's see if the capacitors have leaked or anything. Obviously we want to take a closer look. I've already seen that some things have rusted, but let's take a closer look at this sucker. So I'm taking a closer look inside of my ATR8000, and let's see, it's got a ROM which is labeled 3.02. I don't know how late of a ROM that is. Here's the RAM. I checked, and it is the 16K of RAM instead of the 64. So this system's not set up to run CP/M, which is fine. Maybe I will someday do that. Maybe I won't. I just checked online quickly to see if the 64K chips are available, and I found them around. I can't find prices for them. They have to get quotes, but they seem to be available. Here are the edge connectors for the various peripherals, and since I'm not wearing my glasses, I cannot tell you what they are from the back. I think this says printer disk, so that must be the serial port. This is going to be the computers in, and then the peripheral out. I don't really know how that works, honestly. I will check it out. Here's a CPU, here's a digital controller, or a disk drive controller, and I'll try to do a little closer up and maybe raise this up a tiny bit so you can see a little bit better about what we're looking at. This is about the best view that I'm going to be able to get of the inside of this ATR8000. Look at some of the size of these capacitors. I said I don't think any of them are leaking, but I will show you maybe a close-up, and that orange one is definitely leaking. Doesn't look like it got onto the board yet, but it is. I'm glad I never tried to turn this thing on before, because I don't know what would happen to that. I guess maybe they become a short when they open. Well, if they open, then they're obviously an open. I don't know what happens to them, but I'll try to show up that. Maybe I'll close out with the sad news of how I have a leaking cap on here. This is the power supply, which, let me put on my glasses real quick. It seems to be totally rusty. Or, it's not that it's rusty, it's just it's got paper around all the coil wire. Which this has been in all sorts of weather and has shed, so who knows how that's going to work. The Z80's here, the Western Digital controller is here for the drives. I guess we have some voltage regulators here. I'm guessing that's what these are. Got some, the heat sinks here. That's about all I know. Like I said, in the back you've got your printer port, your serial port, your two SIO ports here, like the printer port. I don't know what else to identify in here. I'm going to have my friend Rick take a look at this, maybe. Rick, if you're watching this, I'm not volunteering for you for this. No need to look at it if you don't want to. It's just an interesting piece of hardware. As I guess they say in some of the podcasts I listen to over in England, they say, that's a neat bit of kit. And this is a neat bit of kit. I don't know if I will ever get it running. But at least I have taken a look at it, and I can appreciate it for what it is, and I understand it a little bit better now. It's 2020, and so this piece of hardware is 38 years old. And what it did in its time seems pretty interesting and amazing. Maybe just for the heck of it, I'll do some close-ups of the board of various areas and maybe 4 quadrants or something like that. Maybe I'll start off with the left side of the board and show that, and then I will show the right side. Something like that. Let's figure out what I do. Now, if you're not into hardware, and you probably are if you watch this video this far, you might want to skip the rest, because this is even nerdier than what I normally would look at. I know that there's some people who are really into some of these things and they'd like to see close-ups. And so that's what I'm going to try to do. This is looking at from the front of the board. This is the front left side corner. So you've got your windings here, your transformer, and I guess your voltage regulators. You've got some diodes there. You've got some jumpers. I think you can see in the view camera right here. Can you see them? I'm not sure if you can see them. It says here, it says ATR8000, made in USA, 1982, Software Publishers Inc. This is a Rev C motherboard. So that's, I don't know, maybe for all I know, that might be the first one, the worst one, the best one. I don't know. Maybe the Rev A and Rev B never came out. I don't know. You never can tell unless you really get into the hardware of these things. All right, so I will move over a little bit and we'll settle down there in a second. Now, this is about the middle of the board, and you can see that you've got the caps. Oh yeah, next thing I'm going to do, after I show the bottom of this board, I'll show you the leaking cap. That's a pretty sight to behold. All right, you can pause this anytime, get a closer look if you want. Looking at the front of the ATR8000, this is the front right corner, maybe about 1/3 of the machine, something like that, 1/3 of the PCB. Here's that capacitor that's leaking. I tried to want to show you the entire thing. I might zoom in even more to get a better picture of it. I'm not sure how clear it's coming out here. Hopefully it's coming out clear. But that's the, I was going to say that's the problem with these boards. Oh, it looks like maybe the cap behind it's leaking too. I'm not going to get too much into that here. I'm not going to be replacing caps on this board. But before I would use it, they would have to be replaced. Oh, I just realized there's a fuse down there. That's kind of neat. All right, I'm going to zoom in on that just a wee bit more. This is another angle on that leaky capacitor. Pretty bad. I mean, it's not the worst I've ever seen, but I guess the worst I've ever seen is a cap that's exploded, or one that's even caught fire, actually. So that's bad. But this one is leaking, and as far as I can tell, it hasn't reached the board yet, but it probably will someday. I thought I'd just be a little bit scary and spook both myself and other computer users to show what's leaking out of here. I don't know if you can actually see it bulging, but from here you can actually see that it's bulging. So yeah, that's why people recommend changing your caps out, because this is the kind of thing that happens over time. Honestly, this cap hasn't gotten onto the board yet, so that's great, but it's been in there for 38 years. How does it last this long at all? I don't know. I wanted to show the ATR8000 looking at it from the left-hand side, and the reason I'm doing that is because, yes, here's the RAM, but also there's the a fuse down there. So I wonder what would happen if I did plug this in, which I'm not going to test this out, but if I plugged it in, the cap's blown, would the fuse blow before it killed the board? I don't know. And since I'm looking at this RAM, why don't I just do a close-up of it? I can also show you the jumper positions. Actually, I might try to show you from the other side, because everything is labeled from the other side. So again, I'm trying to orient you to what the board looks like here, and the reason I'm doing that is because in this case, here's the RAM. This is the front of the case here, and obviously the other side's the back, and all the designations for like the chips and stuff like that. Like this one I think says U22 or 23 or something like that. I can't quite read it from here. And the Z80, like the Z80 I think says it's U14. In fact, I will show you how I cheat, because I have to cheat in order to read these things. And yeah, let's see if I can cheat for you. Let's see what that does. Dun, dun, dun. So we have resistor R13, and the chip does seem to be U14. I also should put on my glasses. I've got glasses, why not wear them, right? Yeah, definitely U14. So that's this, and I'll try to do a close-up of this part of the board just a little bit more. There's probably a few people still watching, maybe not many, but if you're interested in still watching, well, here you go. There's the RAM, there's the jumpers to set the RAM. I think you have to move 6 or 7 jumpers. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I guess 7 jumpers in order to tell it if you have 64K in there or 16K. And as I said, this system is just going to be working as a peripheral box. So whoever was using this probably had some disk drives hooked up to it. And if I'm lucky, maybe that TRS-80 disk drive was what was hooked up to this, and it's already had the modifications done on it, although I don't have the cable for it. So there's that. Let me move the camera down a little bit, and I'll show you maybe from here down. Yeah, just giving a little shot of the board looking at it from this angle. And there's a Z80 CPU, there's the ROM. What else? In fact, if people know much about this, let me know. Like I said, this ROM is labeled 3.02 maybe plus or 3.202T. Not sure which. I mean, it can be dumped. Let's see what else we got going on here. Let's move it down a wee bit more. Okay, now we are looking at, let's see, this is the Western Digital controller. We're almost at the bottom of the board, or the side of the board, so the right side of the board. And this actually has, I think that's a bit of epoxy, so you can't see what it says there. I think that's what that is. It looks like epoxy to me. Yeah. If someone who's knowledgeable about this can put a link in the notes, or even make your own video and explain what the heck's going on with this system, because I don't know too much about it, and I'd love to see someone have one running. So please make a video, show me it running, and not just booting up a system for 20 seconds. That's neat, but I'd like to see someone with their entire setup going. That'd be really cool. And that is it. That's basically the whole board. I'm going to give you an overview of the board from the left side now, or the right side. I'm sorry, this is the right side, and I'm going to do it from looking at it from the front, and then that's it. I'm going to close out. I'm going to show a couple more pictures of this board afterward, just some pictures that I found online, and I'll describe them, and maybe I'll dub over them, something like that, give a voiceover. Like I want to show a picture of this system hooked up with two 5 1/4 inch drives and two 8-inch floppies. But for right now, I'm going to show one last view of the system from above. I really do need to wrap this video up. I've been shooting for quite a while, a couple hours, and I've made 50 separate little short videos, and walked around the house, gone into the garage a bit, all silently and secretly. So fast you didn't even notice I was gone, right? Again, I want to thank my friend Quinn for inspiring me to make a video a week. This one might take a little longer to add to the YouTube, because I've still got to edit it still, and that's going to take a while to get all these together. I want to thank my friend Rick for, showing me that there's some use in these old Ataris, which I knew that already, but he likes to use the hardware and stuff, and he's shown me some great stuff he's got. He's a local friend. I want to thank my friend Christopher, who's also a local friend. We'll get together sometime and play some video games, talk about some Arthur Macon Man. And Chris, my buddy, Chris++, we'll get together again sometime soon as well. I want to thank my wife for understanding this hobby. One of these days, she and I will play some Donkey Kong. That's one of her favorite games for the 8-bit. Maybe we'll have a 2-player game of that. I'll keep that a secret. She doesn't watch these videos, but my son does. So, I want to thank my son. You watch some of these videos once in a while too, and he's made a video recently that was pretty cool. He's in his mid-20s, and he made a video on part one of the three-part video on the history of video game music that he made for his elementary school students, because he's a music teacher. And all right, so this is the ATR8000. I'm going to close off with a couple of pictures, and that's it. And next time I will be showing you a game, and that game is Morloc's Tower, Dunjonquest. All right, maybe I won't do some voiceovers. I'll just roll credits over some of the pictures of some of the interesting pictures of the system. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. I've kind of ended up with a longer video than I suspected. At this point, the video is about, I don't know, an hour and 15 minutes or so, but there's just a couple more things I wanted to add, and I'm going to add them here. So here's what we get. We get an ad that first appeared in Antic in August of 1984. By this time, the system was already about 2 years old. This second picture here is from the first review that I could find of the system, and this is from the July 1983 issue of Antic magazine. If there are earlier reviews, I couldn't find any. This close-up picture is just taken from that last page that you saw, but this is the only picture I could find online that has the system set up with 4 drives, and 2 of these drives on the right-hand side you can see are larger than the other 2. And I have to say, the ones on top of the ATR8000 are pretty large all to themselves. So the ones on the side are actually 8-inch floppy disks. So those are heavy. If you've ever picked one of those up, they are heavy monsters. This next picture, the third one so far? No, I guess the fourth one. This is a article from Byte magazine from December 1983, and this is by Dave and Sandy Small. If you get a chance and you want to learn more about this system, read this article. Byte magazine is available on archive.org, and the article starts on page 329. I found the article really helpful, and I learned a whole bunch about the ATR8000, some of which I tried to put into this video, but most of which just wouldn't fit. And the video's already long enough. I'm not going to try to stuff it all in there when there's an article that you can read. This is the other page that has pictures from that same article, and these pictures are of the Z80 adapter board that allows you to use the 8088. And I took close-ups from this very page. So this next picture is of the top of the last page, and this is the Co-Power 88 mainboard, which is mounted on the bottom tray of the ATR8000. And it's kind of weird. What seems to happen here is that the Co-Power 88 processor board fits on top of the Z80, something like that. I don't really gather it. Don't quote me on that. But it's I can't find out too much information about this board. I imagine the ATR8000's rare enough, and how many of these 8088 processors boards were sold, I'm not sure. And also, it seemed like it was of limited use because it didn't support all the factors of the original IBM. It sure is a weird item. And this is from a website called a8maestro.com, which seems to have been set up by someone named Richard Dedelfson in about August of 2001. And the site has been updated now and then. The picture's a little blurry, but this is from pictures that were probably taken with maybe a camera from that time period, which would have been low res. And he's showing his personal 8088 with extra RAM. And that was an option that you could buy, but this is the only version I could see, or the only picture that I could find that has it. The last article I want to show, which is from, let's see, the July 1984 issue of Antic, and this one is kind of a follow-up to the previous article that they had about a year earlier. And it's just this one page, and it talks a little bit more about how the IBM compatibility and the CP/M compatibility works. And I'm going to close out with this last picture. This is the cover of the ATR8000 CP/M supplement. This is about 42 pages or something of information. It assumes you have some working knowledge of the CP/M already, or at least that you have a reference material book available. And that probably makes sense because you would have been buying CP/M probably from them so that you could get it, and it would have come with a manual. So you would have used that manual to learn CP/M and figure out how to use it as a reference. This manual, which I'm not going to show any more pages from, was going to be able to help you figure out how to use your disk drives with CP/M and how to get that all set up properly. I haven't looked at it too much since I can't run CP/M, but if I ever upgrade my ATR8000, I'm glad that there's a scan of this available. Thanks for watching this video. I know it's been a little longer. I need to put some more effort into making these videos shorter, both for your sanity and my sanity. Thanks for watching.